What's going on, guys? We thought of an interesting video that for somebody new getting into hunting. I remember when I first started hunting, I remember I'd look at a patch of big woods and not know where to start when it comes to trying to target a big buck or even just deer in general, for instance. But over the years, I've read a lot of books and just done a lot of hunting to see what they do. And so I'm going to share, and we all are going to share kind of a little tidbit of what we think is a good spot to harvest a big buck. When you got land that just, spreads out and all you see is ridges and everything like that. So basically, like, what I look for is I just look for like where a ridge pinches together, which they call a saddle. And if you're looking at a topo map, it's going to be like right here. You see like these lines, they pinch in, and that's where a saddle actually just kind of comes together. Those are good spots right here to sit for all day sits. And because that's the, bucks and does just alike will cross this thing because it's the lowest part in that ridge line. But I've seen a lot of deer, and that's helped me open it up. So whenever you're looking at a map like this, just find a long ridge and just kind of find where the ridge kind of comes to a pinch right there. Here's another little example of what I'm talking about. And but this is just coming from one guy. Lance, what do you think? If you're looking at a piece like this, what would draw your eye?
I'm just gonna dive in a little deeper on yours. You want to zoom in on a saddle?
On a saddle. Let's see, where was I at? Okay, right here.
Okay, zoom out a little bit. So he's on the saddle here, but what kind of catches my eye would be this little flat. It's a little bit further from the saddle, but a lot of times if you get a flat like that, you're going to get it on an acorn flat or white oaks and whatnot, so it's good for foraging. So not only do you have this good travel corridor coming through this saddle, but this travel corridor leads right to what could possibly be an acorn flat. So it's more than just a saddle that might be bringing the deer through there. They might be going through that saddle to get to food, or further down in here, it looks like you got a little river system, which is steep right off of this flat here. But if you go over here a little bit, it mellows out some. So they're kind of just going to be traveling the easiest point through, like he said, but there's food on the way there. So you got more than one thing to get the deer's attention.
Yeah, and another thing I guess I should have pointed out first thing first, when you're reading a topo map like this, all these lines on here are lines of elevation. So right here you see these lines are really close together. That means you got a steep drop off right there. When the lines start getting farther spaced, it's more of a gradual drop off because the elevation lines actually, I don't know exactly how far they are in increments.
Well, these are 20 foot.
Yeah, if you do, that one's 1,100 to 1,200, and how many lines is in between? 1, 2,
Should be
3, 4, 5 lines.
Yeah.
So you're looking at
100 foot between the dark lines and 20 foot between the
so there's a
light
100 foot
lines.
elevation drop right there.
Yeah.
So the closer your elevation drops are, or your lines are, the steeper the terrain.
Yeah. And you can kind of see that just by looking at it, just how it looks like that's like more of a cliff, or this is a point coming off here, and it just kind of has more of a gradual drop off into that creek bottom there.
And then this would be a pretty good example of almost a bluff. Well, right in there, it's really steep, looks to be. Or over in here, the lines are pretty close.
Let's see, let's find a good example. There's right there. There's a good. You can tell that's a real good steep drop off right there because all them lines are just stacked.
Especially on this other side of the hill too, right there.
Yeah.
That shaded part, that's your steep side.
Yeah. But.
And that's also a good ridge. You're around rut time, your bucks will be traveling them ridge chops. A lot of times I've kind of figured out.
And here's the thing. I've when I'm hunting a ridge line, I've always picked this hen up, and it's helped me get on more big bucks. So when a buck's cruising a ridge line, usually he's gonna stay right here on this, pretty much this line right here. 9 times out of 10.
Which line?
That big fat one right there. right on the edge, about 3/4 of the way up a ridge. They usually don't ever run just straight down the ridge unless they're chasing a doe or something like that. Because like most of the time your doe trails are going to be coming up ridges like this, crossing over. And so a buck's going to run that line right there, checking them doe trails during the rut to see which, you know, if there's a hot doe trail like that. And if you're on the leeward side of the wind, so leeward would mean, say you're on this ridge right here and the wind's blowing this way, it's going to be blowing up and over the ridge right there. You want to be on the downwind side of that ridge right there. And that way the buck, when he's cruising that thing, checking doe trails, he can smell everything that's coming over the top of the ridge to him. In the morning time, the thermals are going to be coming up from the bottom. So it's going to put you right there where the buck can smell either side, he can see. And it kind of just is the safest spot for a buck to cruise down there. And by doing that, that's what helped me kill that 8-pointer a couple of years ago. I knew the wind was going to be switching right over top of that ridge, and we got in there, and it wasn't probably an hour. We ended up getting a good 125-inch 8-pointer down. So. But Alton, he likes looking at Google Earth, which there's all kinds of maps to look at, but you can tell a lot just by the terrain of the earth. What do you like to look at as far as when you're looking to kill a big buck? I know you've killed several, so yeah, you show us.
I go a little bit of a different route. Like if I'm going to a big woods scenario, this is very helpful to me, but I'll be honest with you, I'm not the best at reading that. So I have this on my cell phone. I have a lot of time to kill at work. What I'll do a lot of times is like take this, what they're looking at, I think it's the same thing on this map, right? So I'm a bottom hunter and an awkward point hunter, if that makes any sense. I'll tell you what I mean. I like bottoms. I've grown up on Missouri bottoms, river bottoms, creek bottoms. That's what I'm used to hunting. A lot of times you find your thickets on the bottoms, like right here on this creek coming out of this lake. And sorry guys if we're pointing out your best spots. I don't know if we are or not, but if you follow this creek up, I mean, I've never been here, but let's change which we're going on a completely different way of looking at this than what they are. So I know they're talking about that, and that's super friendly. I'll start on this creek. If I was to look at this ground right here that they were looking at, and I'll zoom up this creek and I'll look for the flow of land. So you have this ridge that they're talking about. They're talking about the saddles and everything up here. But like I said, a lot of times I have found that deer will bed right here on the sides of these bottoms, looking down. If there's a thicket, which I can't hardly tell right here. Take that for instance. That looks kind of like a thicket. You've got a creek that kind of comes off this, creek that comes off this. Where I would love to hunt right there, depending on morning, evening, acorns, there's a lot of different things, is it looks like kind of an awkward point in between here that comes up and kind of goes up into these ridges. And I think a good way of doing this would be, you always hear top of the hills in the morning, the bottoms in the evening because of thermals and stuff. So I'm looking at the same area they're looking at, but I just don't hardly use that, which I think if you can read that, you're better off. I can't. It's the truth. I can't read it real well. What I can look is in Google Earth lets you do it. You can kind of just get at a level where you can see the flow. So if I was coming in here, I'd like I said, this evening hunt, somewhere right here on this awkward point, deer coming down into here, out of here in the mornings, especially come early rut stuff. You find those thickets right on the sides of those hills. A lot of times you can get, say that's a thicket and the wind is coming out, which north is pointing this way, coming out of the north. I would think that deer would either run this side ridge over here, or run underneath it, and let those thermals drop down to them. Perfect example last year, with me and Mikey, actually where my buck came out of was those bottoms, and we caught those deer running kind of those bottoms, and Mikey's buck was coming right down a creek. I think just really checking those thickets, letting those thermals drop down to him, and he was able to check those thickets by just walking down that bottom. I mean, he was just getting everything coming off the hills to him. I don't know if I made any sense. You know what I mean?
That's another topic right there. When you're reading this, I think the number one secret to killing a big buck and being consistent at it is knowing what the wind does, knowing what thermals do, because thermals will change the wind up just like that. In the morning time, thermals rise. All the warm air just gets pushed up, so the thermals are going to climb up these hillsides And then the evening time it's going to do the opposite. About 15 minutes, 20 minutes before dark, they're all going to fall down. And so that's what bucks will rely on a lot of times. That's why, like in the morning, they'll run the top of ridges kind of. That way they can catch thermals coming up. And I mean, thermals apply to every kind of hunting, not just whitetail hunting. Elk hunting out west, elk will play them thermals. And that's the thing, is a big whitetail buck that's lived a long time knows thermals better than most humans do. So
Yeah.
to get in front of one, you kind of got to really do your study and be able to study the wind and what it does.
And get lucky.
And get lucky. That's the biggest part.
Yeah.
You forget the biggest part of deer hunting. It's 99% luck.
I know I keep looking at this spot, but we're talking about, this area. Another thing about that spot I looked at is you got this ridge that comes down. You got a ridge that dumps down here, and you got kind of, that doesn't look super steep right there. I wish I could find that exact thing and see if I'm right. And this is kind of a flat down here. I'd like to set somewhere on the end of one of these points and just see if I can catch them coming in and out of here. That's what I think I would do.
It looks like you've got a bunch of different edge right there. You've
You
got
got-
2 steeps, you've got 1 shallow, you've got thickets, you've got a creek at the bottom,
You
you've
got
probably
2.
got open hardwoods up at the top.
Yeah, you got 2 creeks coming off.
All right, so for these guys, would you prefer that to be an evening or morning
Oh,
Steve?
definitely evening.
You
Definitely.
think they're going to be coming
Yeah.
into bed or coming in to feed? What do you take?
Well, it
what's your
depends
take on
what
that?
time of year. What time of year are we talking?
We're talking
Late
beginning of
October.
November,
Late
Beginning of
October,
November,
beginning of
November.
November.
Yeah.
That's an
when
evening.
things are going to start changing.
Evening set, if I could, of course, you want to go in here and look for that fresh sign and stuff, but an evening set down in here, catch such kill. I know they cruise on top of ridge. My farm I grew up on is nothing but 3 ridges, and I've killed a lot of big deer on top of them. I see it. I feel like I see a lot more deer in the bottoms.
Bucks 9 times out of 10 will make most of their sign in bottom.
Yeah.
At night.
So maybe that's what they're doing. Maybe they are getting up out of bed and they're running those bottoms, making their sign, checking those all that stuff, and then they're shooting up at the ridges. If we knew exactly what a whitetail was doing,
Yeah.
we would be experts.
You wouldn't believe how fast this channel will take off.
Right, but
I was going to chime in.
Yeah.
I think one thing that a lot of people overlook, especially when it comes to new hunters, is like for example, where he was at here, especially during rut time. The bucks might be traveling up and down ridges and running all sorts of places. They're going to have to drink.
mhm.
And another good reason to sit down there is find a good little access to water that's off a trail. They're going to be coming in there at some point or another because they're too busy chasing does. They might be coming in there right before daylight, just getting up, getting some water, or in the evenings. You never know when a deer, a buck, or a deer in general is going to come down to water. And I think that gets overlooked quite a bit.
Oh, for sure. I killed a pretty good deer a couple years ago. This was early season, especially early season circumstances. Where we live, it was 92 degrees the day I killed it. And that's all I was doing. The only thing I was focused on was a little bitty cattle pond, and that was an area very similar to this. Big woods, creek bottoms, but the creek was dry. It was a very hot summer, so I found the nastiest. It looked like a mosquito infested pond, but I sat on top of it, and I probably counted 30, 40 deer that night, and ended up shooting 142-inch deer just watching that water. That's all. That's.
I killed one last year also, right off the edge of a pond.
Oh, for sure, yeah. Especially when it's hot, he's on the money. I think just the water's important.
Yeah.
And this was just a little cattle pond that the guy built out into his field or out in the woods.
Yeah.
Just he would throw the cattle on there, and then he needed something for water because there wasn't no creeks coming through there. And I sat on a ridge or on a point, on a funnel that came down into the pond.
Yeah.
And I probably watched 8 or 10 deer that evening come down in there, take a drink, and then I finally had a mature doe come in and decide to take her out because a lot of times you'll get in. I found that some does, the mature does, will kick off yearlings that aren't theirs, and they kind of rule the roost. So I like to take out a mature doe just so they're not
For sure.
kicking out other deer that would live there.
Yeah, looking at like wooded areas like here in southeast Missouri, you know, everybody says there's bigger deer in northern Missouri than there is in southeast Missouri. There are probably more bigger deer, but I don't think there's bigger deer. There are some studs where we live at down here.
Very much so.
But the difference between North Missouri, South Missouri is, I mean, I'll see if
I'll zoom out real quick. Nothing but woods down here. Are you zooming? And then we go up here to northern Missouri. Just drop on a random spot. Sorry if this is your farm, guys.
Yeah, but so if you can see here, like, I mean, your wood lines, you're bound to see a big deer if you're hunting just a limited amount of woods. But here in southeast Missouri, we have so many hardwoods that just, I mean, them big bucks, they know how to, they got thousands of acres to walk around you.
Yeah.
Versus hundreds of funnels to just a couple funnels.
Yeah.
That's leading into a food source of some
And
sort.
I've heard it said that, you know, killing an Ozark, Missouri buck is one of the, you know, most challenging things to do, because, I mean, you gotta,
This type of topography, you get into the types of fingers more than saddles and stuff like that, because they just have little fingers coming off the ridges that probably aren't very big ridges compared to what we're used to down here.
yeah. Yeah, and
Not saying it's any easier.
And the same way, like, when you think, like, everybody, I had a guy tell me one time, he's like, you want to kill a big buck easy, go to Illinois. And the reason, I mean, Illinois is flat, so you don't have to, you can throw thermals out the window mostly. And that, you just got to worry about your wind direction, same way as Kansas. I mean, you just got to make sure your wind's blowing the right way, and it's not going to change. When you're dealing with hills and all this other area down here, I mean, thermals are going to change which way the wind direction goes, or which way it pulls down to them. For example, like a couple years ago, I had a buck come in on me. I was hunting off of a river around here, and I had this buck come in. It was early morning, and the dew was just starting to rise, and this buck, he come in right behind me, uphill from me, and all of a sudden he just stopped in his tracks. He didn't know I was there, and the wind was going the opposite direction. But I think what he did was he just turned around and walked back because he caught my thermals coming up the hill. And then a little bit later, my buddy was hunting at the bottom of the hill, and here comes an 8-pointer dogging some does right below me. The does went down the trail to go towards my buddy. That buck stopped right at the top of the hill looking down that hill. And then all of a sudden he turned back, left the does, and come running up right by me, and I put a shot on him, didn't find him. But that's what he did, is I think he smelled my buddy's thermals coming up that ridge to him. He knew it wasn't safe, so he got out of there. And that's what'll get you 9 times out of 10 out here in these ridges like this.
You know, a big mature deer and a true mature deer will check his wind, I think, every few steps, every step.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he's constantly like that deer that we seen, one of the deer that we seen last year. I mean, when he was walking, and this was big woods that we were hunting in. When he was walking, you could just see him lick his nose, lick his nose, lick his nose, smell this branch, do this. I mean, he's checking himself. If that wind direction changed, especially when I was talking about bottoms, that wind a lot of times just swirls down there, and it can ruin you. It can ruin your hunt.
Yeah, that's the hard thing about bottoms, is that wind will swirl, because it'll hit them ridges and go all crazy like that. That's why they always tell you a lot of times hunting the top of ridges is the safest place, but it's not always. If you know what the thermals do and you know what the wind's going to do, you can kind of beat them a little bit, but it takes, I still ain't figured it out. I still get busted a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I've been
I think the biggest key to killing big bucks is
hunting.
I've heard, well, that's
hunting.
hunting, yeah. But I heard Hunt Beast tell it one time on his channel that confidence is what it's all about. Like a thought out plan of how it's going to work will win 9 times out of 10 more than just jumping out in a tree and just not knowing what you're doing.
And I think confidence gets you to sit longer too.
Yeah.
It does.
It does.
And I think the confidence goes along with a little bit of you gotta be brave too. You know,
Yeah.
you gotta, instead of taking the safe route. You know, and I think I caught me and you doing this a lot last year. We thought we knew where these deer were bedding at. We thought we knew where their area was, and we would sit back and try to get away from them where we could see them, but we weren't really diving deep in there. And I think you gotta be brave. You're not. I don't know if that's the right word, but
Well, you got to be unafraid sometimes.
yeah.
I mean, you can
You
play.
guys talking about going into the heart of it. instead of
you got to
the
go
outskirts.
right into it. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of times if you play it too safe, that'll be you know, it's kind of a fine line where you're going to be overconfident versus hanging back.
This year is my first year that's going to be public because I moved away from my dad's farm. And used to, I'd hunt my dad's farm. I'd hunt the outskirts of it. I was
Scared to go in.
I was afraid to dive in.
Yeah.
I didn't want to push the deer out somewhere else. I would just hunt the outskirts of bedding areas, trying to figure out what day they might be coming down this trail. But this year, hunting public, I'm going to try not to worry about that as much. I'm going to find a bedding area, and I'm going to, with that saddle, I'm going to try to get as close as I can in there, because I mean, if the deer, there's other people that's going to be hunting them.
Mm-hmm.
So why not just go into it full force, play your winds right, play your thermals right, and get in there as close as you can to bedding, food, water, and don't take the safe route all the time.
Yeah.
Well, safe route is definitely. I mean that's
All the
what-
time, yeah.
Yeah, that's what he was talking about. There's a fine line there between taking the safe route and diving into the mix of it.
And it could be a matter of 200 yards away from the bedding area, and you're close to that line, but sometimes you just need to go 50 yards closer, 100 yards closer to that bedding area.
Yeah.
I'm sure bow hunters all together, all across the country, have had giants slip by them. Not just slip by them, but sit out there on that 80 yard, 70, 90 yard.
Because they were afraid to dive in just a little bit more.
Yeah, they might have seen him get out of bed and watch him walk up that ridge.
Yeah.
And that might have been the only time they seen him that year. You know what I mean? And they could have just. I mean, they could have busted the deer, but I don't know.
And another thing I've learned a lot about, or I've had a lot of success doing, is if you find a good thicket out somewhere, hunting the downwind side of that thicket, because instead of a buck weaving his way all around through that thicket looking for a doe, he's going to skirt the edge of it, because he can smell. Like, smelling is a buck's survival. If he doesn't smell right, he dies. And that's usually the few bucks that have come across me. They
Their nose jammed or something.
Yeah, but so I mean, beating that deer's nose, I think, is the biggest thing that every hunter out there is trying to figure out. I wish I had as much time as the hunting beast, and he's a hunting beast. That's what he is.
Yeah.
He's been out there. And he gets to walk every inch of the thing and try to find the buck beds. As a working man and a father to my little girl, I get out as much as I can, but that's not enough to know exactly what's going on. You just got to kind of really, it's kind of a half knowledge, half guesstimate when I go out.
Going on that subject too, the going out as much as possible is huge. You know, and you hear this every year from everybody. If you have a day off, if you have a couple hours in the rut, you get into the tree. Like, you know what I mean? You get as much as you can. I know it's harder for certain people because they have kids, they have jobs. Shoot, some weeks I'm working 6 days a week. But on your day off, if it says it's raining and thunderstorming, still go. I mean, don't get yourself killed.
Yeah.
But like one of my best hunts last year, early season, out of my farm was just a random day off. It was a Thursday. But it was storming that morning. That was that day I had those 2 bucks come up on me, and luckily I didn't shoot the one, but I could have. He was a really good deer, but it was raining. It was a nasty morning, but I had my alarm set and everything. I got up and I was just like, you know what? I'm going hunting. I don't care if it's raining. I can get wet. You know, I'm going. And that's, I think, you know, it's a opportunity. If you get an opportunity to get in the woods, do it.
Yeah.
You know. And like I said, he says, you know, he's got the kid and the job, and that makes it hard sometimes.
Yeah, it's all about sacrifice. Like,
It is.
sacrifice is a big word, because you have to sacrifice doing anything you do in life. If you wanna kill a big buck, you're gonna have to sacrifice that time as a parent to your kid, not getting to know him as much, or vice versa. If you want to be the best parent you have, so there's a fine line in everything you do, and you got to sacrifice whatever you do. Like, I got to leave my family for a week when we go on this rut trip to try to kill a big buck, and you know, it's just kind of, you got to play all your.
But then she'll get to the age, like your little girl's 2.
Yeah.
I got a little boy that's 4. Then it gets to the age where you get to introduce your kids into hunting. Then it's a whole new book that you're opening,
Oh
a
yeah.
whole new chapter. But
So basically, if there's 3 points that you can pull out of this whole conversation we got on how to kill a big buck,
kind of went off, didn't it?
We segued a couple times.
Kinda
I think my main point is, regardless if you are on a ridge in a bottom, if you find a trail somewhere that looks like it's being used, even if you watch this video and think, well, them guys said I need to be at this side of the ridge or this side of the ridge, if you try and play your thermals and your wind as best as you can and you set on a trail, you will see deer eventually. They come through it once, they'll come through it again.
Yep.
If I had to make a point on this, going back to the subject about the maps is hunting the flow. Like if it feels right that the deer should be moving here, you're seeing the sign, kind of like he's saying, hunt it. You know, if and like the flow of the ground, if it seems like you got a steep hill here, and this is kind of going up that way, it's probably where they're going.
Yeah.
You know, it's just go with the flow, man.
And the biggest here's the thing I drew out of learning all this stuff. So you watch outdoor TV, you watch Michael Waddell. He's up on an open ridge. I mean, you can see 70 yards in every direction, and this big 180-inch buck's chasing this doe. That's a private farm.
That's a private farm.
You don't see that in southeast Missouri. If it looks like so thick that you're like, I cannot squeeze an arrow through this stuff, that's where you need to be.
Yeah.
I mean, you need to be in there because a buck around southeast Missouri, dude, there's so much government, so many people that hunt that, I mean, if you kill a good buck, that's an accomplishment because you beat 200 people trying to kill that same deer, and you beat it because you played the odds in your favor. And so hunting, don't be too scared to getting thick, nasty stuff. Me and you hunted the spot last year, and that was a little too thick. That
Which
one
was
time when we went up there and we got in that clear cut. Remember I climbed up and I was like, there's no way I could shoot unless he's like 5 yards underneath me.
Oh yeah, yep.
Yeah, I mean we were in some
But that's
thick,
where the deer were.
Yeah,
that's
and
where
we seen some.
Yeah, that is where the deer were. I mean, yeah.
When you're in pressured areas, don't be afraid to get as close as you can inside thick stuff.
Yeah.
Because the thick and nastier it is, that means the less people are going to come in there.
Yep.
So
The one thing I'd like to say is, I didn't learn this, but a handful of years ago is I would have an encounter with the deer sitting regardless of where it was, and I was just so in the moment, I didn't stop and think, why did that deer come from that spot?
Yep.
What's beyond where that deer came, and where's that deer heading?
Yeah.
Where he might be possibly heading, or the doe might be possibly heading. So not only enjoy the moment, getting to watch the animal, but as you're watching, try to figure out where they're coming from bedding, where they going to bedding, are they going to food, what they're doing, and just kind of trace their steps backwards. If they're coming in close to evening and it was just happened to be too dark to get a shot off, well, maybe next time when you get a chance to scout, backstep a little bit, backtrack to where they were coming from, because there's a reason they were coming from where they were, and more than likely they're going to repeat it unless you're just catching a buck during the rut.
Yeah.
So take what you can from the hunt and try to learn from every sit.
Yeah. And as the season rolls on, like you got your early season. I like hunting evenings in early season.
Yeah.
Because I bump too many deer in the morning time going out on a whim, not knowing where they are. Or if I'd have just waited that evening, set on where I know they're feeding at, and catch them coming to their food, that would have been easier. And a lot of people don't like to hunt when it's, early season, opening. But that's my favorite time to hunt almost, besides rut.
Yeah.
And besides late season. I like that too.
Oh, you like hunting.
I just like hunting.
Like them all.
I like them all.
And then he's talking about evening hunts in the early season. There can be some magical morning hunts too.
Oh yeah.
I mean, if you can find, like my farm, of course, knowing it for a very long time, you can, if you know where those bedding areas are on those ridges, on the side of those ridges and stuff, you can hunt a morning. It's super thick in those woods, and you might not see a single deer. But you'll have those mornings where you're on that right bedding area, and you'll have 3 or 4 bucks. That bachelor group still comes through, and you have your choice of which deer you want to shoot. So evenings are the best, I think, and I will agree to that. Evenings are definitely the best.
When you don't know where the deer,
right?
Like for instance, your farm, you kind of know the layout.
Yeah,
you
I
know
do.
where they
I
like
do.
to bed.
Yeah.
And so it's a little bit safer for you to go in there,
For
say
sure,
at 4
for
o'clock in the morning and get set up on them and wait for them to come back out of the fields.
For sure.
But if you're going in more blind,
Yeah.
Yeah. You're right.
And
I'm still going hunting though.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm still going.
No, me and Alton had a hunt last year that was crazy. We went out to this government piece in the evening, and how many deer were out in the field in front of us that evening? There's probably 20 or 30
Yeah, 20 or 30. I was gonna say 30.
on
Yeah.
public ground around here, and we didn't get to see the buck we was wanting to see.
We've seen 4 other ones.
Yeah, we seen.
And they got in a fight out in the field.
It was a magical night.
It was a great night. Yeah.
And it's definitely a hunt that is burned into my brain because that evening, remember, all them deer were standing out there. Them bucks started locking antlers.
Oh, it
The
was.
fog was starting to set on
It
the
was.
field. And
It
it's
was-
just like you just got to sit back at those times and just be like, that's why I'm glad I'm on this earth.
Yeah. You got to be in the woods.
Yep.
If you want to see that stuff, you got to be in the woods. You gotta go hunting.
Yep. But anyways, let's wrap this up and let these people get on to what they're doing. But that's just our take on deer hunting, and hope it'll help some of you guys out.
I hope you learned a lot.
Yeah, I mean,
We're still learning.
yeah, we ain't no professionals. We're just helpful redneck people that like to help other people. So
Yep.
get out there this year and try to take some of these tips. Just if you got any questions, leave some comments down below our video. We'd be happy to chat with you guys. Make sure you hit the like button.
And
Make sure you
on all-
subscribe
on
to
all
the-
platforms.
Yeah, go to Facebook, check us out. We got an
MySpace.
Instagram,
MySpace.
MySpace.
Tom's our top.
I ain't seen MySpace.
Tom's our top friend.
But anyways, y'all stay wild. Get out there and kill some deer.